Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
The wife is very cunning, but the husband is no slouch either. Today's story has a similar plot. Enjoy watching it. Why is your sister here? I asked my wife Josie, looking at her suitcase. She scares me. Wayne, my sister is the most harmless girl on the planet, Josie replied. Can you hurry up? We'll be late. She looks at me all the time, I said. Sometimes I feel like a damn antelope around her. Wayne, you run fast, honey, but not that fast, she laughed. My sister makes you feel like an antelope? I have to tell her about this. My sister's being chased by legions of men like a messiah, and you feel like a deer? You'll have to explain this, dear, but keep getting ready. Okay, I said. Imagine you're on the plains. You're an antelope, the biggest and fastest antelope in the whole damn jungle. You're tough. That's me. She laughed. I liked her laugh. It made her seem even younger than her 27 years. Okay, I'm an antelope, and I'm cool, she laughed. I'm the fastest damn antelope in the whole damn jungle. No, it's not you, I said. It's me. Remember, I just wanted you to imagine how I feel. Okay, honey, but what does being an antelope have to do with having your hands on my breasts? She asked. I can do whatever I want, I said. I'm cool, remember? So, I'm an antelope, and I'm cool until your sister comes along. I spot her, and fear runs through me like water through a goose. Your sister is a cheetah, and she's hungry. Guess what's on the menu? Shitty antelope, she asked. Exactly, I said. And next to her, I'm no longer cool. She's shittier than me, and I know it. What's worse, she knows it too. So she sits on a tree branch watching me. It's a game for her, but this is my damn life. She just sits and looks at me, waiting for me to make my move. Common sense tells me not to run. My brain tells me not to run because I'll just be tired when I die. But everything in my DNA tells me to run. Of everyone in the herd, I have the best chance of escaping. I start to breathe more often. Then I realize that she's not really looking at me, she looks at the whole herd. One of the young deer kicks up its hooves as if about to run. I know she'll catch his lumbering fifth place before he even takes 3 steps. He doesn't stand a chance, he's just a fart with delusions of grandeur. He kicks up his hooves again, and she slowly turns her head in his direction. I take off as if launched with jet thrust. I jump and run, kicking up the ground like the real badass I know I am. I am lightning incarnate. I am the quintessence of movement. I'm an idiot. I feel her claws scratching at my back legs, and suddenly I can't run anymore. She never looked at the whole herd, she only wanted me. She wanted me because I was wrong. It was never a game for her, it was always about food for her young. I'm the biggest, which means I am the biggest food. And I've never been cool. When she rips big chunks of meat out of me, she doesn't rejoice or dance. It's just another day at the office for her. And will you finally finish packing my damn suitcase before I throw you in the nut house? Josie said. My little sister doesn't eat crap. She won't do anything bad to you, fool. If she ever tried, she'd see what a lioness does to a cheetah. Wayne, I shouldn't tell you this, but Alyssa has a long-standing crush on you. She's liked you since she was a child, but you are mine, so give her a break, okay? I said. Oh yeah, I'm serious, Wayne, she said. You should feel flattered. Alyssa is younger than me, prettier than me, and has a better figure. A lot of guys would be happy. A lot of guys don't love their wives as much as I love you, I said, holding up my wedding ring for her to see. I love you so much, Wayne, she cried. Why don't you have a swimsuit? I asked. It's a business trip, honey, she smiled. If I was going for fun, you'd come with me. But it's a quick 3-day trip. We arrive, have an introductory meeting, visit their factory, make an offer, negotiate a price, and go home. We won't have time for beaches or pools. Okay, you're packed, I said. Come here, love of my life. She growled. The kiss we exchanged was soft and warm but hot at the same time. "Josie, you'll be late," said a voice behind us. I turned around and met the gaze of the eyes that swallowed my soul. Alyssa, my wife's 19-year-old sister, stood there. Josie is 5 feet 2 inches tall and compactly built. She has big breasts and a big butt. Men have been known to exit the elevator just to follow her butt. Alyssa, on the other hand, was 5 feet 9 inches tall and anatomically perplexing. Her waist was so narrow that you could wrap both your arms around her and your fingers would interlock. However, her breasts were the same size as Josie's, but based on her small waist and chest, they seemed much larger. Her butt wasn't as big, but the shape and fullness were the same. Her legs were at least a mile long and shaped like a dancer's. Josie had dark hair like their father. She wore it short to make it easy to care for. Alyssa, on the other hand, had long, light red hair with waves flowing down her back. They both had the same incredible gray eyes, and at that moment Alyssa used them on me. "I'll take this bag to the car, Wayne," she said. "Thank you, Alyssa," I said. "You're welcome, Wayne. Your family." "I love you," she said. "What about me?" asked Josie. "You're acting like a sister," she said. Josie stuck her tongue out at her departing sister and pulled me towards her for another kiss. "Get some rest, mister," she said. "When I return, I will make you walk with difficulty. You will walk like a duck for days." She grabbed my buttocks. "Are you sure you don't want me to take you to the airport?" I asked, picking up her other suitcase. "Damn, what's inside here?" "My laptop, a projector, everything I need for the presentation, and a few other little things you couldn't fit into the bag you were packing," she said. "Honey, if we were traveling together, I'd need 2 or 3 bags of just clothes. I need to look my best to keep my man interested. But for a business trip, 1 bag of clothes, a carry-on, and another bag of equipment are fine." "This is so wrong," I said. Josie turned around and looked at me. I didn't notice at the time, but her reaction was filled with nervousness or fear. "What's wrong, dear?" she asked. The playfulness disappeared from her face, and she looked scared. "If we were traveling together and you wanted to look your best, you wouldn't bring any clothes," I said. She crossed the room and we kissed again. "Tick-tock," Alyssa said again from behind us. Josie looked at her watch and started cursing. "Damn, I'm late," she said. "Not yet," Alyssa said, "but I have a feeling you will be." She had the strangest, deathly expression on her face, like Wednesday Addams. "Alyssa, someday you will meet a man you can't keep your hands off," I said. "Already met," said Alyssa. "That's exactly what I wanted to talk to Wayne about. I don't know much about relationships between boys and girls. This is my first relationship." "Wow," I said. "I'd think someone who looks like you would be fighting off guys with a stick." Alyssa smiled so brightly that she beamed. "That's what I do," she said. "And I'm pretty good with this stick. I need to make sure that only the right guy gets through. That's why I need advice from a man's point of view." "You could talk to Dad," I said. Both sisters laughed. "Josie, you really need to get your act together," Alyssa said. I took Josie's hand and walked her down to her car. "Honey, if you're late, I could give you a ride," I said, pointing to my Mustang. It stood in the driveway as if ready to take off. Besides Josie, my Mustang was my favorite thing. "We both know I could never fit all 3 bags in this car," Josie laughed. She stood on her tiptoes to kiss me. "Tick-tock," Alyssa said again behind us. Josie smiled and shook her head. "Honey, be kind to her. Talk to her. She's my only sister. Plus, it'll take your mind off missing me. Spend time with her. You need to mend your relationship." "But look at her," I said in a whisper. "She's sitting on the porch like a cheetah waiting for a scrawny antelope." Josie burst out laughing. "You should think about how I will yearn to give myself to someone who will help my little sister." "I already told John that I won't go on business trips without you anymore," she said as she got into the car. "This is not realistic, honey," I told her. "It may happen that I don't want to go or I won't be able to leave work. What if I have to leave for work? The main thing is that I love you and I trust you. John is a good guy. He wouldn't take you with him unless it were absolutely necessary. As I looked at her, I saw tears running down her cheeks. I love you so much, Wayne, she said. But no matter what you think, this is our last time apart. She quickly kissed me again, then got into the car and drove away. I turned towards the house and noticed Alyssa sitting on the railing surrounding our front porch. She didn't sit so much as wait. For a second, I wanted to run, I said. It's too late to run, she said. Josie. As soon as I parked my car at the airport, I knew I was in trouble. First, I had less than 20 minutes to check in and get to my departure gate. Secondly, my hand luggage was missing. I didn't understand how it happened. I put the bag in the trunk of the car myself. I had no choice. I grabbed 2 bags, one that Wayne had packed and the other full of my equipment. Then I thought, Wayne didn't actually put any of the bags in the trunk. Alyssa put one bag in the trunk, and I put the other. So I must have been mistaken in thinking that I put my carry-on luggage in the trunk. Wayne didn't do this, and my sister had no reason to take my bag. I was probably so worried about the next 3 days that I simply forgot my bag somewhere at home. Since the bag was locked, I had nothing to worry about. Even if Wayne found the bag, he wouldn't damage it just to see what was inside. Since my cell phone was also in my bag, I couldn't call him until I got to the hotel. And if I don't start moving, I won't go anywhere. So I ran through the airport like a Simpson to check in and get to my gate. I made it to the gate literally seconds before boarding began. Some passengers were already boarding the plane. I sat down in my seat next to my boss, John, who looked up as I sat down. I thought you had changed your mind, he said. No way, I chuckled. I've been looking forward to this trip since I got back from the last one. 3 days of sun and fun in Jamaica, he said, and we both know that most of the time we won't leave the room, right? We'll probably get tired at some point, I said. He laughed. But even tired, the sight of these big old breasts will make me resurrect, he whispered in my ear. I somehow forgot my hand luggage, I said. So what? He said. Not that important. We're not going to work on this trip. I bought 5 new sets of underwear for you, I said. Save them for Wayne, he said. Oh damn, what if he finds your bag? Wayne loves me. He would never violate my privacy, I said. He trusts me. That makes him a real fool, doesn't it? He grinned. That makes you both like this, I said. You think he's a fool because he loves me. I think you're a fool because you married a woman you don't love just for a job. 10 years from now, when I'm a fat housewife, my husband will still love me. I'll have a wonderful life full of love with Wayne and our children. What will you have? A castle with a woman you don't love? And realistically speaking, how much higher do you expect to rise in this company that you married his daughter? The old man doesn't trust you. I think you've reached your peak. How did we even start talking about this topic? He asked. You started by insulting Wayne, I said. For the rest of the flight, we kept up a light conversation. It didn't really matter because I was already angry. I decided that maybe what I told Wayne should be true. This was not only to be my last trip with John but also the last time I would be with him. We had a good period of time, but sooner or later, such things either end, or the participants get caught. I couldn't afford to lose Wayne to John, and I already knew that, like the teens from Mission Impossible, if we got caught, John would deny guilt. Everything would be my fault, and he would make me look guilty to save his career first and his marriage second. I thought a lot about the whole situation. Looking at my scam like an insect under a microscope was an eye-opener for me. This had nothing to do with my marriage. My marriage to Wayne was a source of joy and beauty, but like any truly beautiful thing, there was pain, suffering, and ugliness behind it. Nikes and iPhones are made using child labor. Diamonds are mined in conditions where slave-like workers work almost to death. And like my scam, none of these things are necessary. I told myself that I'm a complex person with many sides to my personality. I told myself that in order to be the beautiful person Wayne loved, I needed to let the ugliness out sometimes. If the beast remains in chains for too long, it could break out and hurt the people I love. Wayne, ready for our talk, dear? Alyssa asked, walking toward me in the living room. How about we grill something and chat on your terrace? I looked at her, remembering Josie's promise. I was sure that my wife had no idea what situation she was putting me in. I think she relied on the fact that I loved her so much that it would keep me safe, keep us both safe. But Alyssa was a pure force of nature. As I looked at her, nodding in agreement to her proposal, I noticed that most of the buttons on her blouse were undone, and the amount of cleavage visible was staggering. I think she felt safe with me, and she also had the habit, like her sister, of taking off her bra as soon as possible to feel more comfortable. I felt like a pervert. I am 28 years old. I am a married man. I'll be 30 soon. Alyssa is 19, barely out of childhood. She's at that weird stage where she's legally an adult but still a teenager. The worst part was that she trusted me enough that she wanted my advice on her romantic problems and felt comfortable enough to walk around scantily clad in front of me. But I only thought of her as an intimate object. I clearly needed to spend time in church. Okay, do a man's business and cook us some meat. I'll make some potatoes real quick. Maybe French fries would be better, she grinned. Guys don't like salad. She came up to me with her arms wide open. My mind told me it was a familial bonding, like a child reaching out to his father or uncle. But the way her breasts shifted under her blouse, revealing even more cleavage, seemed predatory. Hugs, she laughed. I wondered if all the women in their family laughed so charmingly. When I extended my arms, I tried to do so without my body coming into contact with any dangerous body parts. You don't love me, do you, Wayne? She asked sadly. Of course I do, I said. Then why did you hug me like I had leprosy? She asked. I didn't want to accidentally stumble into the wrong place, I said. You mean my breasts? She was laughing. Wayne, they're pretty big. They always get in the way. I wanted you to hug me to show me that you care about me and that we are close. Sure, here is the corrected version. I'm sorry, Liz, I said, trying not to offend her. Don't apologize, honey, just do better, she smiled. This time, I reached out and hugged her the same way I hugged Josie. Her large breasts pressed against my chest, and she moved even closer to me. When I finally pulled away from her, it was impossible not to notice her sigh. I didn't mention it, but her calling me honey made me nervous, and the look in her gray eyes reminded me of the same look her sister had in her very similar gray eyes when they were full of lust. I'll get the grill going, I said before slipping out the back door. I sat down on the deck and took a few deep breaths. I felt like I was trapped in a movie. It would be one of those slapstick comedies where the normal guy is seduced by a hot teenage girl who wants him as some sort of collateral for a sorority. Then I realized that everything was even worse. It was like one of those internet stories that Plain Bob wrote a couple of, where a guy was approached by a really hot woman who tried to seduce him. After the guy does this, his wife jumps out of the bushes and tells him that since he cheated, she too can have a night with another person. She says this is the only way to save their marriage. Of course, the guy she chooses turns out to be a 7-foot-tall black guy with a bald head and a lot of dignity. The guy loves his wife and regretfully agrees with her. And, of course, it turns out that the seductress has been working with his wife all this time to frame the guy. Whenever I read these stories, I always think of the wise words spoken by my favorite daytime sports radio host, Taryn Reginald Foster, who said, and I quote, "Let that walk, but now, sensing the scent of a setup, I became truly suspicious." I turned on the grill, and while it was heating up, I looked around the yard and deck for cameras or to see if anyone was watching me. I went into the kitchen to get a couple of steaks and saw Alice buzzing around the stove, frying some potatoes. Somehow, she had lost her super skinny jeans, and to make matters worse, all I could see were her long, sculpted legs. I wondered how short the shorts she was wearing were. I shook my head to clear my thoughts, grabbed 2 steaks, and headed back to the deck. The moon was up, and it sucked. I didn't want this evening to have any seductive or romantic overtones. I tried my best to keep everything light and fresh. Of course, it didn't help much when she came up behind me and I jumped at her words. "It smells really good, honey," she said quietly. She looked at me and giggled as I jumped and waved my arms in surprise. She reached out to touch my hand, and I flinched. "Okay, Wayne, what happened?" she asked. Why are you suddenly so nervous? I didn't say anything at first. I didn't want to seem stupid. Alyssa, I'm embarrassed to see you dressed like that, I said. I always liked it when you called me that, she smiled. I don't think you remember coming into my bedroom 5 or 6 years ago to read me stories when I was dressed almost exactly the same. But 5 or 6 years ago you weren't. Nonsense, she exploded angrily. Come on, tell me, why are you acting so strange? I started to invent something, but she stood there, hands on hips, glaring at me. Her blouse sat baggily, and I saw her breasts in all their glory. They were even more impressive than I had imagined. I was dumbfounded. I also noticed that I had been wrong before. Alyssa was not wearing short shorts under her blouse, she was wearing lace panties. Don't tell me it's my breasts again, she said. Look, Wayne, you see Josie's all the time, so what's the problem? There must be something else. Spit it out. Again, I thought of making something up, but surprisingly, I told her the truth. I admitted that I loved her, but at that moment, I was afraid she was trying to catch me in something. I told her about the Just Plain Bob story, and before I could finish, she was laughing out loud. She went into the house and flipped the steaks as she walked past the grill. I don't like them burnt, she said over her shoulder. I knew this was in reference to the fact that Josie actually preferred her meat a little brown. I sat there stunned as she went about her business in the house. I could still hear her laugh from time to time. She returned with French fries, which she placed in a large salad bowl and set the bowl on the table in front of me. I flipped the steaks one more time as she went back into the house, still laughing. When she returned, she was talking on the phone. She turned and looked at me over her shoulder. Bring us a bottle of wine, dear, she told me. Alyssa, you're only 19, I said. You're not yet 21. She silenced me with an imperial wave of her hand. Dad, our dinner is almost ready, she said. Can I have 1 glass of wine with dinner, like sometimes at home? You know Josie doesn't mind, but you have to tell Wayne. Okay, here he is. I heard my father-in-law's voice telling me to relax a little and let Alyssa have a glass of wine. He told me that she does this at home all the time and that children much younger than her drink wine regularly in Europe. He continued by saying that it was better to let her drink sometimes at home than to go out and drink heavily with friends and get into trouble. Alyssa returned the phone and told him good night, saying she would see him tomorrow or the next day. See, I won't drive after I drink my wine, she chuckled. But, I began. She walked over and removed the steaks from the grill, bringing them to the table. Now, she said, I don't know who Plain Bob is, but no one will ever read these stories. I didn't tell her that I was a big fan of his and had read every story he had ever written. I also didn't mention that I had at least 100 of these stories saved on my computer so I could read them whenever I wanted. Wayne, that doesn't make sense, she said. I mean, if a guy's wife wants to sleep with some big black guy, she won't resort to such ridiculous tricks. She'll just go out and sleep with someone, knowing that her husband won't know unless he comes home and trips over them. Men never notice anything, you guys are pathetic. A man thinks, my woman loves me, so she would never cheat on me, so his mind really rejects the possibility of this. That's funny, Wayne, she said. You guys can feel when your fuel injector is dirty without even starting the damn car. But okay, give me an example. Remember what my aunt and uncle went through? Remember when they argued for weeks and didn't talk to each other? Remember how he thought they were arguing about money? It turned out that she told him she needed a lot of new clothes because she couldn't fit into her old ones. He finally got angry and told someone he didn't see the logic in buying her all new clothes just because she couldn't fit her fat fifth place into the old ones. It would make more sense if she just lost weight. It turned out that she was pregnant with their first child. You guys never notice anything. I nodded because I remembered the story. It took a long time to save their marriage, and to this day, her uncle will answer any question from his wife with just 2 words, yes, dear. Wayne, before we start, I need you to know something, she said between bites. I was so nervous that I could barely pick at my food. I knew something was going on, and it was out of my control. If Josie wanted me to do something, I would never take her side against you for any reason. I heard Josie tell you tonight that I have a crush on you," she said to me. She looked at me as she said this, and I almost choked on my steak when I saw the look in her eyes. The gray-eyed cheetah was back and he was hungry. "This is not sympathy," she said. "I love you, Wayne. Always have. And I hate Josie. It's not jealousy, my sister has always treated me like crap. When other people are around, she pretends to be someone else, but Josie has a dark side that most people don't even know about. They don't suspect." I laughed. "I've been married to Josie for 6 years," I said. "We dated 2 years before. I was your age when we got married. If she had a dark side, I would have known about it." She just smiled at me. The cheetah was playing with its prey again. "Josie is not here to defend herself right now," I said. "Josie is on vacation, far from here." She smiled. "I came to discuss this. There are so many things I want to say." My heart was pounding in my chest. I felt like I needed to lighten up the conversation, so I muttered the first thing that came to mind. "You know, I like girls a little older," I said. She simply smiled the same smile, but her eyes became a little brighter. She got up and returned to the house. When she came back, she came straight to me and threw something at my feet. I was so nervous that I couldn't take my eyes off her gray eyes. "What is this?" I asked. I looked to see what she had dropped on the floor. It was Josie's bag. "You stole Josie's bag?" I exclaimed in surprise. "Oh God, you're so cute," she said. "I can't wait for you to be just as devoted to me." She picked up the bag and placed it on the table. "Wayne, let's get started," she grinned. "Why is Josie's bag locked?" I asked. "Think about it. There's no point in locking it when she should have had it on the plane with her." She paused to give me time to process her words. "Josie played with your head, honey. She made you pack her bags. Why would a woman let her husband pack her bags? Do you remember how you told her there wasn't a swimsuit in the bag? Josie let you pack one of her bags while I packed the one that contained her laptop and all her business luggage. It was done to distract you from this bag." She went to the kitchen and returned with a knife. "No," I said. "You can't cut Josie's bag." One look from her cheetah eyes and the antelope fell silent. She cut through the thick fabric of the bag and then looked at me. "Wayne, I would never do anything bad to you," she said. "Ready to see the Matrix?" I just nodded. For some reason, I felt like I had to follow Alyssa wherever she led. Alyssa took out a bunch of silk and lace lingerie from her bag. "Wow," I said. "I didn't know my wife wore seamless panties." "She does," she said. "And why did she take them with her on a business trip, especially if you're not going with her?" She showed me several sets of lingerie that became more and more revealing. "When was the last time she wore that for you?" she asked with a raised eyebrow accusingly. I just looked at her like a deer caught in the headlights of a car. She said. "Most of these things still have tags on them. It's like she bought them for this trip." She took Josie's cell phone out of her bag and placed it on the table. "Wayne, you know we are a very close family, right?" she said. My mind was spinning, my heart was breaking, and I had no protection. "I don't want to be too personal, but did you know that Josie was planning to stop taking the pills so you could have a baby?" she continued. She discussed this with her mom a few weeks ago. It takes a woman a few weeks to a month to become fertile, so Josie should still have been safe. But you know my sister, she doesn't like to take risks. That's probably why she needed these. I watched in horror as Alyssa pulled out packs of protections. "Damn, there are a lot of them," she exclaimed. "There must be at least 50 here." She looked at me. "Are you sure you weren't supposed to go on this trip?" she asked. "Alyssa, leave me alone," I replied sharply. "Wayne, I'm sorry," she said quietly. I couldn't hold back any longer. I sank onto the table, trying to hold back my tears. A lot of people think I'm a very strong guy, but my heart just broke. Alyssa came over and hugged me, kissing me tenderly on the cheek. "Wayne, I would never hurt you," she said. "But you had to find out. I couldn't let that continue. You know, you're the best guy I know." I couldn't wait until she got pregnant, then you'd be tied to her for the rest of your life. It had to come out. To be honest, until recently, I thought she had stopped. What do you mean, stopped? I asked. Honey, I honestly don't know what she's been doing since you two got married, Alyssa said. But Josie always brought men into the house when I was a kid, and they weren't very nice men. She was fine for a while, and then she got this strange uneasy look. That's when she started mocking me. It wasn't violent, but she did really shitty things behind my back. Do you remember 5 years ago, right after your anniversary? She asked Josie to tell our parents about me smoking weed. She came up to them with tears in her eyes, like she was having a hard time doing it, and told them. What she didn't tell them was that I tried it only twice and she already decided it wasn't for me. She also didn't tell them that the first time I tried it was with her. The parents were shocked and angry. They locked me up for the whole summer. I wasn't even allowed to leave the house without them. I couldn't go anywhere without my parents accompanying me. Wayne, the only bright moments for me that summer were when you came to visit. By then, I already hated Josie. That's why the 14-year-old girl still wanted her hot son-in-law to read her bedtime stories. Think about it, Wayne. I could read very well on my own. I was in high school, I already had breasts. They weren't as big as they are now, but back then, they also held up well when you were around. Josie is not the woman you thought she was. I know it's hard for you, but it has to come out. She grabbed the phone from the table. What's her password? She asked. 5150, I said. I was still trying to comprehend what was happening. Alyssa sat down next to me, so close that we were touching each other. As she looked through her phone, my mind was spinning in 100 directions. Wayne, honey, I'm not a cheetah. I'm a tigress. I'll protect what's mine from any damn threat in the jungle. Nothing can hurt you, especially not some lousy lioness, she said. A few minutes later, she pushed the phone towards me, showing me a series of text messages and emails that spanned almost 2 years. It was almost as long as she had been working with John. It looks like they started right after she started working with him, she said. This was the last straw. I stood up and walked into the house, with Alyssa following me. I grabbed the phone from the table and called Josie. I heard the phone ring, and after a couple of rings, she answered. Josie, what the hell is wrong with you? I shouted. She can't hear you, honey, Alyssa said from behind me. Remember, we have her number right here, and it's only been about 3 hours since she left. Wayne, I want you to take a couple of days to calm down and think about this. Anything you want to do or say to her can wait until she comes back. But she will, I started. She will sleep with her boss, Alyssa finished. News of the day. She's been doing this for years. The only difference is that now you know about it. You need to calm down and start deciding what you want to do next. I sat down on the sofa, and Alyssa brought me a glass of wine, which I left on the table outside. We sat in the dark, drinking wine and sitting silently. After some time, Alyssa started telling me things. She told me how much she always cared about me and how she didn't think Josie deserved me. At some point, she asked if I wanted revenge, and I told her I was going to beat John up as soon as I saw him. How would that even mean anything? She asked. John is not the one who cheated on you, honey. He didn't swear an oath to be faithful to you, my sister did. I can't hit a girl, I said. My tongue felt very furry, and at the same time, I felt a little dizzy and blurry. Oh boy, I muttered. Oh boy what? Asked Alyssa. Liz, stop it, I said loudly. Revenge, she said quietly. This will hit Josie the hardest. It doesn't even have to be your revenge against her, it could be my revenge for all the twisted things she's done to me over the years. I can't do this to you, Liz, I mumbled. You're like my little sister. I can't use you. You have to start seeing me differently, honey, she said. I'm not your sister, and you're not using me. I'm using you. She stopped talking and kissed me. Where our lips touched, I saw stars and explosions. She put her hand between us, unbuttoned my pants, and pulled down the zipper. I started to say something, but she put her finger on my lips to silence me. Don't think, she said. Just feel. Before I knew what was happening, she took off my pants and boxers, threw off her blouse, and pulled down her panties. Then she climbed back on me, and we had an intim. The next morning, I woke up with an without clothes 19-year-old goddess stretched out on top of me. My head was pounding, and my whole life flashed before my eyes. I was dead. Josie would kill me. I had no idea why I was without anything and in bed with her little sister. I tried to slowly get out of bed. Maybe if I wasn't in bed when she woke up, I could fix something. Perhaps if she had been as stunned as I was, she wouldn't remember what happened. I moved slowly and carefully. I looked at Alyssa and was scared. There were small bite marks on her neck. She looked like she had been attacked by a vampire. There were also small red marks on her chest, and her breasts were incredibly beautiful. They were about the same size as Josie's, but somehow they seemed different. They rose and fell with every breath. I admired her toned stomach and thought about its beauty. Perhaps it was her youth, but her body was magnificent. Yes, I thought to myself, I can tell all the guys in prison about this. I had no idea how to get out of bed without waking her. She made a sound when I tried to move, which froze me in place. I've been dreaming about this for so long, I said, but could we sleep a little more? I'm tired. Baby, she purred. I was shocked. I wondered where she thought she was and with whom. Suddenly, the phone rang. The ringing was abrupt, breaking the morning silence. Our phone had a caller ID system that announced the name of the caller. Calling from Jamaica Inn Hotel and Resort, said a female robotic voice. I started to move, but everything started to come back to my memory. No matter how fast I thought, Alyssa was faster. Her eyes opened instantly, and her hand moved just as quickly. Don't even think about answering the damn phone, she hissed. She stared at me to make sure I understood. Don't you remember what we talked about last night? Lissa, I'm dizzy, I said. I don't remember much about last night. A very strange expression appeared on her face. I'm so sorry, honey, I said. I must have been completely out of my mind. I'll never drink again. Look, I don't know what I can do or say to fix this. So you don't remember when we talked and found out that the woman you married was cheating on you? She asked. Suddenly, it all started coming back. The pain returned quickly, followed by anger. Yes, I remember now, I said. That still doesn't explain or justify this, I said, pointing at us. All I can say is that I was out of my mind, and I will do whatever you want to fix it. Wayne, don't worry about it, she said. It was bound to happen sooner or later. What was going to happen sooner or later? I asked. You know, she said, night. The first time it happens to everyone. You mean, I started, but my head exploded, and I fought the urge to throw up. Last night it was, she smiled. You were my first. But I rushed to the bathroom. I made it to the toilet just in time. Everything in my stomach came out. Alyssa was there, with tears in her eyes. She pushed me into the shower and hugged me. I tried to push her away, but she refused to let go. Warm water poured over us, and we just stood under it for a while. Alyssa, I'll take you home, I said. What the hell are you talking about? She asked. You know, I said, last night was just wrong. No matter how upset I was about Josie, I should never have taken it out on you. Your parents will hate me. Let's make breakfast together, she smiled. We need to talk, honey. I think you're a little confused. She took my hand, and we walked into the kitchen, still without clothes. I went into my room and grabbed a robe and clean boxers. Alyssa winked at me as I walked back into the kitchen. She was still without anything and didn't seem constrained at all. Alyssa, don't you want to wear at least something? I asked. How many eggs do you want? She asked. No eggs, please, I said. Just bacon, coffee, juice, and some of those cinnamon waffles. Oh, I'll take that too, she said. So Wayne, what do you think happened last night? I was upset to find out that my wife, your sister, the woman I thought I loved, had been cheating on me for at least 2 years. I think I got drunk and took advantage of you. I took something very important from you, and I can never fix this, I said. She laughed. Honey, that's not what happened at all. It's not even close, she said, pushing me into a chair. Wayne, baby, you only had half a glass of wine. I did everything I could to seduce you. I tried all evening. I walked around the house in front of you wearing only a pair of very small panties with my breasts exposed. I was looking for what? Yours? I shrugged. They always say on TV that just because a woman is dressed provocatively doesn't mean she's looking for an intim, I said. I thought you just felt at home here. Wayne, I would only dress like that in front of you, honey. I wouldn't even let my dad see me like that. And it still didn't work. I had you on pills, that's why you feel like this now, she said. I feel really bad about it now, but you have to understand, I was desperate. I felt like last night might have been my only chance. I was sure that in your pain and disappointment after finding out that my sister is not worth even 3 drops of your urine, you would want revenge and want to prove your masculinity by sleeping with the first woman you came across. And here I am, trembling in front of you, showing you my breasts, and you did nothing. Do you know how long I spent planning last night? I watched a lot of adult films to learn how to give pleasure. I didn't even get to try it all the way, she said. Every time I turned you on again, you came back between my legs. I'm sorry I was such a disappointment. Alyssa, I said, I'm sure your next boyfriend will be better. Before I knew what happened, she slapped me in the face as hard as she could. Who's the next guy? She screamed. Do you really think I'm a slut like the one you married? I wiped her tears and led her out of the kitchen and into the living room. Alyssa, I'm sorry, I said. I just want you to be happy. Wayne, last night wasn't ideal, she said. It didn't go the way I planned, but it was wonderful. Wayne, I know Viagra played a big role, but you made love to me 6 times. But Liz, you deserve so much more, I said. Your first time was supposed to be. The conversation was interrupted by the phone ringing. Don't answer, she said. We need a day to get over what she's doing. I want you to be strong when you talk to her. That's why we're resting today. We walked up to the table, and the phone kept ringing in the background. Wayne, can we talk about last night? She asked between bites. Are you ever going to get dressed? I asked. You like it, she winked. You like to look at it, and you like to touch it. I, on the other hand, like that you like it. Josie was never happy with what she had, Alyssa said. She always wanted to have her cake and eat it too. I'm different. I've always appreciated simple things. So now you call me simple? I said. She started giggling, and the happiness in her gray eyes made me forget about my upset. She took my hand and led me not to the sofa, but to my bedroom. She kissed me and pushed me back onto the bed. This time, our connection was slow and romantic. We kissed and hugged, holding each other throughout the entire act. Hold me and love me, Wayne, she insisted. I feel so loved. Josie, it was the worst vacation of my entire life. The flight was difficult, the flight attendants looked at me like I was a freak, and I had to buy protections from the store on the ground floor of our hotel. This made half the staff think I was an approachable girl. John and I finally made it to our room. He didn't seem to care that all the underwear I bought for our trip was gone. He opened his suitcase, took out his gear, and tied me up. Then he took out a whip and started hitting my 5th place. Damn, what's wrong with you? I screamed. We're coming home in 2 days, and my husband will be expecting us to have a night. How am I supposed to explain the big red bump on my butt? Sorry, he said. I'll apply the cream when we're done. After that, I noticed something. John didn't care what he did to me. He untied me to have a night, and that was it. I'm going to go out for a bit, he said. Intim. It felt so raunchy and liberating to just have an intimate. It was like my husband Wayne just going out for a run. He didn't have to run anywhere in particular, there was no imminent threat of death, and he just went out and ran. Night with John was the same. There was nothing attached to it. I had no emotional connection with John. I wasn't trying to create or maintain any kind of romantic relationship or have a child. It was just simple physical intimate. But lying in this strange bed, a little guilt crept into me. Strangely, I didn't feel guilty about the night. It was my fault that I left Wayne in the first place. I have to admit that Wayne was the perfect husband. He loved me without question and supported everything I wanted to do. He was really good looking, but he didn't seem to know it. Even my idiot sister was in love with him. I enjoyed teasing her with him, knowing that she had no chance with him. Wayne was all mine. He worshipped me. It was funny because Wayne grew up to be a typical nerd. He was smart almost to a fault, especially when it came to computers and all that nonsense. But I could turn him into a babbling idiot just by unfastening a couple of buttons. But I saw the signs, even if Wayne didn't. I was built like a woman on my mother's side. We were all short and stocky with big breasts and big butts. Lately, when I looked at myself in the mirror, I saw cellulite, a small area that disappeared when I tensed my glute muscles, but it was there. I went on a diet and started exercising more, but it was a battle I couldn't win. I could stay healthy. I was only 28 years old, but my body would eventually lose out to fat. Wayne wouldn't care. He loved me for who I am. Still, I knew deep down that it was time to stop being irresponsible and give him children. It was an exciting time in Wayne's life. I saw the future stretching out before him and knew I needed to bind us together with something more powerful than just love. Children would anchor us together. I learned all this from my mother. She was barely over 5 feet tall and weighed over 200 pounds. She was cheerful and happy because she knew that my father would never leave her. My father was tall and still athletic at almost 60 years old. He could choose among older women, but he was bound by his family. They had a family together, and my father was a family man. The same will happen to Wayne. My worthless sister Alyssa had no such problems. Alyssa was truly a miracle. I hated her for this. Everyone in my mother's family was short and stocky, while everyone in my father's family was tall and thin. When we were kids, it didn't matter. Sometimes, I was jealous of how thin Alyssa was, but when I reached my teens and realized how much boys loved looking at my breasts and my big fifth place, I never wanted to be built like Alyssa again. I also noticed that some of my relatives on my father's side were jealous of my curves. I had larger breasts as a teenager than almost all the adult women on his side of the family. I often laughed at Alyssa too. Another thing I found pathetic about Alyssa was that she had no ambition. Her progress at school and her grades were average at best, and she was completely uncompetitive. She was my funny, stocky little sister. And then it happened almost overnight. Her thick blonde hair took on a surprising reddish tint. The completely natural highlights looked as if she'd paid a ton of money for them at the salon, and some boys began to pay attention to her. She seemed to grow taller, and her thin legs, once like bean sprouts, became fuller. This change was due to her hips becoming wider and rounder. Suddenly, there were boys at the door whom she shyly told to go home. Then one day, I found something unusual in the laundry basket, a bra. It was too small to belong to me or my mother, but it felt like a sign. I started doing everything I could to discredit her. I pointed out to my parents everything she did wrong. I enjoyed causing her trouble. I think it was more jealousy than anything else. Alyssa seemed to defy the odds, inheriting the best traits from both sides of the family. She was tall and slim but had big breasts and an incredible figure. It just wasn't fair, and I was determined to make her pay for it. However, when I met Wayne, I didn't care anymore. To be honest, I forgot about how I had tortured Alyssa. I loved showing off Wayne in front of her. From the first day I brought him home, I noticed that she was in love with him. I loved kissing him in front of her and even rubbing myself against him when I knew she was watching. That was one of the reasons I asked Wayne to give her some advice about this foolish boy she found. After talking to Wayne, she would see how her boyfriend had failed and would again realize that Wayne was completely mine. Outside of work, Wayne only talked about 2 things, his 2013 Mustang F and me. All these thoughts about Wayne made me miss him even more. I picked up the phone and called him, but it went straight to voicemail, which was unusual. Perhaps he was not at home. I tried calling his mobile and got the same result. I didn't have to think about it for long because the door opened, and John came back. John and I sat on the balcony overlooking the bay. "That's life," he said. "I wish we could stay here and have an intimate forever." "No chance," I said. "I really miss my husband right now." "Why do you miss this loser?" he asked. "Has he ever taken you to Jamaica?" "John, Wayne will take me anywhere," I replied. "You know he's half your age and already makes a lot more money than you." He stopped there. HR tried to hire him when he left Associates. I told them they offered him more than your salary to head the IT department. He gave up his current job and expects that in a couple of years, he and a few of his colleagues will go out on their own. So how is he a loser? "If he's so great, why are you with me?" he asked. "John, you scratched a certain itch in a certain way," I told him. "With Wayne, I get love. We have a future. He is the man I want to grow old with." But I needed to explore my dark side. "Do you really think Wayne would chain me to a wall and beat me with a whip? This man didn't put earrings on me because he was afraid of hurting me. He won't comb my hair too much. There's no way he would do what you do to me. But John, I've grown out of it. I don't need what we do anymore. This is our last time together," I told him. "What about me?" he asked. "What if I'm not ready to stop?" "Then you need to find someone else to do it with," I said. "Well, we can at least," he began, before all hell broke loose. The door to our hotel room swung open, and 3 guys in masks ran into the room. They saw us on the balcony and approached us. "What is this?" Wayne asked, his voice slow and slurred. One of the guys walked up to Wayne and hit him, causing all desire to resist to disappear from Wayne. Another guy took one of the chairs, stood on it, and removed the cover of the vent on the far wall. Pulling out a hidden iPhone from the open valve, he handed it to the third guy, who connected it to a laptop. "We've got this," said the guy at the computer. "Great," John said. "You did it. Now get out of my room." "Are you sure this is what you want?" John asked. Even through their masks, I could tell these were young guys. "It's really not personal," said another. "We just want some money and we'll leave. We have several ways to do it, but since this is just business for us, you decide how we do it and how much money we get." The third guy began to speak. "We're already guaranteed to make a profit. We used an unregistered, jailbroken iPhone to record high-def video of your, elemental bedroom session. Anyway," the first continued, "the worst-case scenario for us is we just go away and sell your video to an online adult site. We'll get a couple thousand and you'll become famous. Or we can charge you a fee to keep the video off the internet, in which case we'll make even more money." "I mean, how much?" Don asked. "Wait," another interrupted him. "These two are married, but not to each other. It could be profitable. And listen to this, the old man is some kind of business executive." "What about the fat one?" asked the one called John. "From the audio, I think she's his secretary. But she was bragging about how much money her husband makes," the first one said. Don took 2 bags out of his pocket. "Let's take both," he said. They put a bag over my head and one over John's. John tried to resist and was hit on the head, passing out on the spot. They picked me up and took me somewhere. I felt like we were in an elevator and then went outside. I remember being transferred to a car and then to a boat. I don't know how long we spent on the boat, but then we got back into the car or truck and finally went into a building. We changed direction so many times that I had no idea where we were. The next thing I knew, they were talking to me. "Hey," one of the guys said, "I'm going to give you the phone. I want you to call your husband and tell him that if he wants to see you alive again, we need money. I think he can find $20,000, right? Make it $21,000. It'll be easier to split among 3 people." I knew Wayne had almost $100,000 set aside as his share of the cost of the business he and his colleagues were planning to start. I also knew Wayne would pay to get me back. "Okay," I said. "And you, old man," he said, "you can call your old lady and ask her for the same thing. But we don't have that kind of money." Wayne whined, "We barely have any money in our savings account. We just had 3 kids go to college. I have a retirement plan, but I can't touch it until I'm 62, that's 3 years from now." "Looks like you're out of luck," said one of the guys. "Take him back to the boat and dump him," said a voice I recognized as Don. I knew that if they killed John, they probably wouldn't let me go either. They couldn't risk having witnesses. But even if they had let me go, an investigation would have begun, and I didn't want it to be investigated. Wayne would believe we were kidnapped, but when I returned, he would be so relieved that I was safe that I was almost sure I could convince him to just forget about it. "Dawn, can I say something?" I asked. "What the hell do you want?" he asked. "I want us all to get what we want," I said. "I want to make a deal." "Start talking, fatty," he said. "All you need is money, right?" I asked. "Absolutely," he said. "I'll call home," I said. "You can talk to my husband. If I talk to him, he won't be so scared. He might misunderstand how serious the situation is. You can ask him to pay the ransom not only for me but also for John. But make sure he keeps the police, both here in Jamaica and in the States, out of this matter. Okay, lady. It's your fifth place if anything goes wrong," he said. I dialed the phone number he gave me and handed him the phone. "Wayne, why does this always happen to me?" I woke up without clothes again, hugging Alyssa. This time, she swung one leg over my body and wrapped one arm protectively around me. Her beautiful head lay on my chest. I heard the bell ring and noticed her eyes widen as the phone system announced, "Calling from John Jimmy." I wondered why the hell this man was calling me. "Hi," Wayne said in an unfamiliar voice. "Let me hand the phone to your wife for a second." The next thing I heard was Josie's voice. "Darling, this is not a joke," she said. "I need your help. I swear I will return every cent." The voice returned to the phone. "Wayne, how's your day going?" he asked. "Actually, this is one of the best days of my life," I said. "Oh boy, I'm sorry to spoil this, but please remember that this is just business, nothing personal here. So, let's get started. My associates and I are here in beautiful Jamaica, and we have your plump wife and her boss, her lover." He paused, but there was no sign of shock through the phone. Wayne didn't react at all. "Wayne, you don't seem surprised that they're together. In any case, if you want her back, I need you to wire me $42,000 tomorrow morning. To be fair, I should say that only half of that amount is for your wife. She seemed to believe that you would be willing to pay for the return of her lover as well. If not, then you only need half the money, and I will be quite willing to dispose of her boss so that there's no trace of him left." I didn't know what to say. "I realize this is quite shocking news," he continued. "What time is it in Michigan?" "It's just past noon," I said. "And it's Sunday. I'm not sure I'll be able to collect the money until late tomorrow morning." "I completely understand," he replied. "Let's move it forward 24 hours. Tomorrow morning, I'll call you again with the name to transfer the money to. I think Western Union would be best. Explain to the people at your bank and at the Western Union office what you're buying, though that should make you less suspicious. No need to tell you that if you contact the police, well, you'll still get your wife back, but instead of one big fat piece, you'll get hundreds of little fat pieces. I'll call you back later to talk about some very interesting videos that you might not want anyone to see. Goodbye, Wayne. Get back to what you were doing." The phone clicked, cutting off the connection and leaving me in shock. "I'm calling the police," Alyssa said. "No, Alyssa. They could hurt Josie," I said. "The police always ruin things. Let them spoil it." "It wouldn't be our fault," she said. "And she cheated on you anyway. Why would you even want to get her back?" "We're married," I said. "Not anymore," she snorted. "I'll never let her hurt you again." She began to get dressed and, passing by, kissed me. "Call me a fool," she said. "I thought your name was Alyssa," I said. "Haha," she said. "Wayne, I'd do anything for you, but I love you too much to watch you do this to yourself again. When you're tired of Josie's crap, put me first, okay?" I knew I was making a mistake the moment she walked out the door. I started calling, first John's wife, Martha, to tell her what was going on. She asked if she could come over so we could discuss it, and she sounded very angry on the phone. When she arrived, I was surprised. I had never seen Martha before, but she didn't look like I expected. She was a thin, bird-like woman with a business-like appearance. She had beautiful long gray hair that fell to her shoulders. "Mr. Brady, are you sure you're right?" she asked. You can call me Wayne, I said. And I wish it were a joke, but John is not in Jamaica. John's in Florida, she said. He's there with his uncle. They go fishing a couple of times a year. I handed her the phone. Call him, I said. If he or his uncle responds, one of our questions will be answered. She dialed the number and put the phone on speaker. Hello, said an older-sounding voice. Uncle Willie, this is Martha. How's the fishing? Are you catching anything? She asked. No, we're not catching anything, he said. Because we don't fish. I haven't seen any hair or fur from my nephew in maybe 8 years. The look in Martha's eyes told me everything. She was angry and that I should stay away from her. She turned to me. Okay, what the hell is going on? Tell me from the beginning, she said. I told her who I was married to, the trip to Jamaica, and what I had discovered. Shortly after Josie left, I showed her the emails and text messages. She stopped me there. Can you make copies of these for me? She asked. For what? I asked. The texts and emails have nothing to do with the kidnapping. No, but they will be perfect evidence in my divorce, she said. She tilted her head slightly and looked at me. You're not going to try to stay married to her, are you? Haven't you heard the expression, once a cheater, always a cheater? I nodded. Aren't you interested in why this happened? I asked. They've been sleeping with each other for years, she snorted. Young man, do you have a good job? Yes, I said. Have you ever hit your wife? She asked. Of course not, I said. Do you have regular relations with your wife? She asked. Yes, I said. Let her go to hell, she said. Don't try to save her. Consider the marriage a loss. You're a young, handsome man. You can find someone else who won't cheat on you. If you were some kind of slacker or mistreated her, it would be a different matter. Let her go to hell. I finished telling her about the phone call and how much ransom the kidnappers were demanding for Josie and both of them. Then I found out that John had no money. His wife could easily pay the ransom. Her father was on the board of directors of the company where John worked. She didn't even try to raise even half the money. She thought the possibility of this was ridiculous. Why would I go through the trouble of going to court and possibly paying him all that money when these idiots can get me out of it for free? She asked. Seriously, you should think about it too. It's a much cheaper and more effective way to get rid of a cheater, and you'll get a ton of sympathy from women your age. It's up to you, your money, but I won't pay a damn thing to get John back. She gave me a phone number and an email address. Send copies to this number or write to this address, she said. It was nice to meet you, young man. Then she left. She stopped at the door. If you talk to John, tell him that if he somehow survives this situation, he should not even think about returning home. Tell him that he no longer has a home, family, or children. I sat down on the sofa and buried my head in my hands. Then the tears started. I wondered why the hell all this was happening to me. Somewhere in my thoughts, 2 very soft arms hugged me. I won't leave you alone in this, she said. But for the record, I agree with that old woman. Let her go to hell. She got herself into this mess, let her get out of it. I won't be able to get the money until tomorrow, I said. Are you really going to pay for both of them? She asked. I must, I said. Is this right? She asked. Are you going to pay money to save a guy who sleeps with your wife behind your back? I just nodded. Okay, Boy Scout, she said, kissing me. Ride in the car with me, then take me home and get into bed with me. Alyssa, I said. Wayne, if Josie wasn't in your life, is it possible that we could have been together? No, Alyssa, I said. That wouldn't be right. Your parents would hate me. I'm married to your sister. Forget all this, Wayne, she said. Could we be together? I looked at her, into her beautiful eyes, and nodded. I love you, Alyssa, I said, at least as much as I loved what I thought Josie was, maybe even more. Go for a walk, she said. I started the Mustang and drove out of the garage. We drove around, looked at different places, and tried to forget about what I had to do the next day. When it got dark, we went home. I let Alyssa direct me to a place she said had great food. We took food with us. 20 minutes later, we were eating on our porch under a beautiful moon. "How will this all end?" she asked. "Tomorrow, I will pay for the return of your sister and her lover. They will return home. I will file for divorce. Once the divorce is finalized, we will wait for a while and then start dating. Then we will talk to your parents, and if they give us their blessing, we'll get engaged," I said. "So you're going to marry me knowing what my sister turned out to be?" she asked. "You're not like her," I said. "Is this right for you? I know this will take a long time, but I want you to have the opportunity to step back. You have your whole life ahead of you," she said. "If only you knew. If you only knew how long I've been waiting for this," she said. We went to bed and made love slowly and wonderfully. We fell asleep in each other's arms. We woke up early on Monday, prepared breakfast, and sat on the sofa together. I went to the bank and got the cash to transfer while Alyssa sat on the phone. When I returned, we were waiting for the call, which never came. Around 11 in the morning, Alyssa began unbuttoning our clothes. By afternoon, we were lying on the couch kissing when suddenly the phone rang. "Thank you, honey," Josie said over the phone. "I just want to remind you that I love you and will return every penny of your money. I know it has to go towards your business. Wayne, I don't know how I can ever thank you enough for." "Go to hell, John," I said. "Martha told me to tell you not to even think about returning home. She said that you no longer have a home, family, or children." "Wayne, I know we need to talk," Josie said. "I need to explain everything, and I—" "Josie, you don't need to explain anything." "There's no reason to," I said. "Wayne, as soon as you sent the money, they let us go. We woke up in the morning in our usual hotel room. From what I understand, they took us out for a walk, put us on a boat, and then brought us back to our room. They kept us in the dark so that we wouldn't know we were back here. As soon as you handed over the money, it disappeared," she said. "I'll be on the next plane home, honey. We'll get through this." "When did you send the money?" Alyssa asked. "I didn't send it," I told her. "You've been here this whole time. I have cash, but no one asked for it. Do you think it was some kind of joke?" "Honey, I have a feeling," she said. "Look, don't tell Josie you didn't send the money, okay?" "Why?" I asked. Before she could answer me, the phone rang again. "Hi, Wayne," said the voice on the phone. "This is Don Donalak. Do you remember me?" "Yes," I said. "I just received a call from my wife. She said that you have already let her go," he said. "Yes, we did," he said. "Our goals have been achieved. Money was never our goal. We wanted to help a friend. Our friend is more than happy. Before we leave, I have a parting gift for you." He gave me a very long web address and then hung up. Josie, for the first time during the whole trip, I was lucky. I was able to exchange my ticket and transfer to an earlier flight home. I couldn't wait to get out of Jamaica. I understand that blaming the whole country for what I myself did was stupid. The hotel was beautiful, as was the little nature that I managed to see. The locals, real Jamaicans, were very friendly. What happened to me was entirely my fault. The men who kidnapped us, I was no longer sure we were really kidnapped. It seemed more like an elaborate joke, but whatever it was, the men who did it sounded American. Perhaps they were students performing some kind of student ritual. Except for the time they hit John on the head, and he asked for it, they never hurt us. They also never threatened us. I'm sure that, with the exception of the time in the car or truck and a short time on the boat, we never left our room. I remember falling asleep on the sofa in the evening and waking up the next morning when the maid came into the room. She even announced herself upon entering. I took the bag off my head and found myself in our hotel room, which was immaculately clean. Our kidnappers had apparently erased all traces of their presence. The names they called each other were funny. I didn't pay attention to this while we were in their captivity. Donalak, Mickey Mouse, and El Murad with his obviously fake Spanish accent seemed more and more like students. But they were so professional that they took almost $50,000 from us. They also seriously damaged my marriage. During the flight home, I had a lot of time to think. I was sure I could find a way out of this. Perhaps I could convince Wayne that John and I were set up by the kidnappers to make it look like we were having an affair. It was quite logical. The only evidence of any affair was the word of the 3 men who stole money from him. They probably did this to divert attention from their real crimes. Why would I cheat on my husband with a much older man who was less attractive than my husband? It just didn't make sense. Yes, when I return home, this will be my position. There was no romance. It was my word against the word of a gang of thieves. Who would my husband believe? I was sure after half the duration of the first flight that this was so. Wayne's love for me was so strong you could feel it. I may have been taking it for granted lately, but it was a resource I could use. And when I got out of the situation I created, everything would end. No more long-term romances for this girl. I especially would never do anything so unreasonable or stupid again. I gained nothing from the affair except cruelty. John received fresh, younger, more passionate love than ever from his withered wife. I was chained, beaten, and teased. Okay, I liked it. And okay, Wayne would never give me that. He loved me too much. As I thought about it, I realized that this dark side of me is a part of me. Perhaps it was simply the fact that in my relationship with Wayne, I was clearly the dominant one. Maybe I just need someone else to be the boss sometimes. Maybe it was something I could instill in Wayne so I wouldn't have to do something like that again. But if not, I will limit future connections to one night. I waited about an hour at the Chicago airport. It was stupid to wait an hour for a 45-minute flight home to Michigan. At least the airport was nice. I ate something and took a deep breath. I went to a payphone and called Wayne. It was strange. I expected him to be waiting for my call, but he didn't answer. I left him a message that I would be at the airport in about an hour and asked him to meet me. I told him that I loved him and that we had something to talk about. When I arrived at the airport, I looked around for Wayne, but he was nowhere to be seen. I was about to get into a taxi when I noticed my father. He took one of my bags and directed me towards the exit. He put my stuff in the back of his F-150 extended cab and opened the door for me. My sister was sitting in the back seat as usual and didn't even look up from her phone. She was quickly typing something into her iPhone and had the biggest smile on her face. This surprised me. Alyssa was absolutely radiant. Her hair shone and seemed to sparkle every time a ray of sun fell on it. As usual, all this hair was pulled back into a ponytail. She also didn't wear makeup. She was wearing old jeans and her favorite pink sneakers, with a pink hoodie over another sweatshirt. I think she wore all those boyish things to hide her huge breasts. I went through this phase before I met Wayne. I didn't feel comfortable with my body, so I tried to hide it. But if I looked like her, I would walk around as without anything as possible. As usual, Alyssa was just being herself. I guess things didn't work out for her with the guy she was courting, I thought. So, what's up with you and Wayne? My father asked. Well, Dad, every marriage has its ups and downs, I said. From the seat behind me, I heard Alyssa giggling about something. I assumed it was a message on her phone. I think he's a little upset about my sudden business trip, but he was fine before this, I said. He's not okay now, my father said as we pulled up to my house. I ran out onto the porch and took out my keys. I noticed my dad standing in front of the garage and Alyssa looking at me from the truck. I swear I heard her giggle as I tried unsuccessfully to insert the key into the lock on the front door. Then I heard my father lifting the garage door. Oh damn, I said. Wayne must be very upset. He never leaves the garage open. This garage has all his tools and parts for his precious Mustang. He told me to leave it open, my father said. He did it so we could take your things. Suddenly, I couldn't control my fingers. My keys fell to the ground. My father began loading garbage bags and boxes of my clothes and personal items into the back of his truck. I swear I heard my sister giggling in the truck while typing messages. Dad, what did he say? I asked him angrily. Pretty much nothing, just like you when I asked you a little earlier and you told me about ups and downs, my father said. Alyssa laughed loudly at this. He said it would be better if you told everything yourself, my father continued. I think you're onto something, or maybe he just doesn't like the idea of his wife moving halfway across the planet with another man. But Dad, it was just a business trip, I told him. And Wayne was fine, right? Alyssa, you were there right before I left on the trip, wasn't he fine? She looked up from her phone long enough to mutter a few words. I don't think he was okay, she said. I think he agreed with what you wanted, like he always does, whether he likes it or not. So please don't drag me into your business. Her choice of words was too random. You seem quite disturbed by this, my father said. Do you think you can drive? Dad, you know I can't drive this truck, I said. It's mechanics. I was talking about that fancy car Wayne bought you. He said, you should take it. Take it where? I asked. Where does he want me to go? Alyssa, get out of the truck and drive your sister's car home, my father said. He looked at me with a sad expression on his face. Wayne thinks some time apart might help you both work things out. The ride home was silent. My father apparently didn't want to upset me, so we didn't talk much. Over the next few days, I called Wayne at least 100 times. I got a call from work telling me that my vacation was up and if I didn't come back soon, I would have to take medical or emotional leave. I called John, and he hung up. At lunchtime, he called me back from another phone. Josie, we have a problem, he said. Damn it! Why did you hang up the call? I hissed angrily. You can't call me at work, he said. I transferred you. I'm sorry, but you'll be back in the secretarial pool. You'll be there for a long time. You're still getting your salary, although I don't understand why. What the hell do you mean, John? I asked. Martha knows everything, he said quietly. She's divorcing me. Her dad got me this job, so I'm lucky she's letting me stay here. I'll be giving her a little over a third of my salary. I guess if I was unemployed, she couldn't collect from me before she fires you too. So get back to work before you get fired. I'll be back tomorrow, I said. How did she know everything? Before your husband paid to let us go, he contacted Martha. She called my uncle and found out, he said. But John, it doesn't mean anything, I said. All she knows is that we went to Jamaica on business and got kidnapped. Josie, shut up, he hissed. It's over. Martha or her father probably hired a private investigator. They have everything. They have text messages, emails, even video. This is a one-time use phone. I will throw it away after you tell your husband that I will begin paying off the ransom debt as soon as I can. Do you realize that we could die? Martha showed me an article from the internet about tourists being kidnapped and then killed. She refused to pay a penny for me. If Wayne hadn't paid, we'd be dead. Josie is so mad at me that she was willing to let it happen. Then I wondered how much Wayne knew, but it was too late. John ended the call. The next day, I returned to work as promised. Everyone was surprised to see me. There were times when I walked into a room and the conversations died down. I also got a lot of looks. It was still better than staying at my parents' house. All I saw there were my parents' sympathetic but curious glances and Alyssa's constant smirk. I kept calling Wayne over and over and finally started driving to the house, hoping to catch him leaving or returning. I almost caught him one evening. I heard the sound of his Mustang engine and saw him driving down the street. As soon as he arrived at our entrance, I turned off the car to get out. Wayne turned into our driveway and pressed the button to open the garage door. He drove inside, and before he stopped the car, the gate began to close. I ran to the entrance. I knew there were security sensors on the gates. If I could get my hand or foot under the gate before it closed, it would automatically stop, and I could walk under it. I ran faster than I had ever run in my life. I saw that I couldn't keep up, so I rushed forward. I sprawled through the air and landed face and chest on the hard concrete, just 2 feet from the gate. The next day, I looked up from the report I was typing when I heard a lot of whistles and cheers. I saw a very beautiful blonde entering the office. She asked one of the women something and pointed at me. As she approached, she smiled, and I noticed she was chewing gum. Her clothes were very expensive and well-tailored. Her shoes must have been at least 5 inches tall, and they were made of the same material as her briefcase. She asked my name and smacked her gum several times. She then handed me 2 sets of documents. I started looking through the first set and saw that these were divorce papers. "No!" I screamed loudly. "I don't want them. I won't accept them." "You already accepted them, Grandma," she said. "I was told to say that the second set of documents is a restraining order that prohibits you from coming within 100 yards of Mr. Brady or his property. Have a good day." She slammed her gum loudly and then turned on one of her expensive shoes and walked away. I chased after her and caught up with her at the elevator. "Wait," I said. "We're both women. You can give in. You can tell them you didn't find me." She looked at me like I was an insect under a microscope. "No," she said, her voice as cold as ice. "I'll pay you," I said. Luckily, I had taken my purse with me when I chased her. I pulled out 3 crumpled dollars and some change. She looked at my pathetic proposal as the elevator doors began to close. She shook her head and popped her gum. "Don't humiliate yourself anymore, Grandma. Maintain your dignity," she said, and then she disappeared. I left work after crying so much that my tears ruined several of my reports. When I got home, my dad was still at work, and my mom's only reaction was to heat up a can of chicken noodle soup for me. When my father returned home, he looked at the papers and asked me what I wanted to do. I told him that I wanted my husband back. He told me that I should be happy then because getting the divorce papers actually started the process in that direction. As long as I didn't have those papers in my hands, Wayne could ignore me, but divorce is a procedure. There were things that needed to be done, including meetings and a lot of communication. I could even insist on consultations if I considered it necessary. "Dad, you are a genius," I screamed. "I need counseling. We need this counseling. It will help us get back on track." It was a strange coincidence. Just as I was screaming about the need for counseling, I heard Alyssa scream, "Oh crap, this is taking too long." I was sure we weren't talking about the same thing. Consultations did not work the way I wanted. The consultant failed to even scratch Wayne's wall of indifference. He simply did not want to listen to any talk about me returning to our home or about restoring our marriage. He was polite and correct. He came to every meeting and was always punctual. He just wasn't interested in repairing our rift. After a month of consultations, which, according to our lawyers, I paid for because I requested them, we were still no closer to a reunion. We were also no closer to agreeing on compensation of any kind. It was my fault. I refused to discuss compensation. My only goal in the divorce was to keep us together. We moved on to arbitration. The arbitrator proposed an agreement based on normal divorce rules. Since we had only been married for 6 years, I wasn't entitled to much. We also had no children, and we were both healthy and under 30. As time went on and I refused to move, Wayne's lawyer began to play hardball. He changed the reason for divorce from marital incompatibility to infidelity. I had to hide this part from my parents, who still didn't know why we were getting a divorce. Finally, it was Alyssa who proposed the idea. This surprised me because my sister was becoming more angry and irritable every day. My father reminded me of what I was like as a teenager. "That was when I was 14, Dad," I told him. "Alyssa is already 19. She is a grown woman. I wish she would act like an adult and go to college or get married or something like that. I wish she had half the enthusiasm and motivation you had," he said. "You always got what you wanted." Alyssa just grinned at him and me when he said that. Alyssa's suggestion was to have a barbecue in the backyard. We would invite Wayne and sit in the yard, discussing our problems and trying to find a solution. I tried calling Wayne to invite him, but he still refused to take my calls. My mom called him at work. Wayne always loved my parents, so he couldn't refuse her. I cut the grass and got the yard ready for the party. I also got my hair cut and styled. I went out a little early before Wayne was due to arrive and got my makeup done professionally. Wayne, diplomatic as always, arrived on time. He brought 5 very thick steaks and handed them to my father. He gave my mother a bouquet of flowers and a nice bottle of wine. He walked back to the Mustang and handed my dad a 6-pack of sassafras root beer. I walked up to him and took his hand. He took it back. We sat down at the table with my parents and talked. We talked for more than 2 hours, but Wayne refused to make concessions. So far, I had been able to prevent my parents from finding out the reason for the divorce. My father finally begged Wayne to give me another chance. He told Wayne that I would quit my job and become a stay-at-home mom like my mom. "Damn it, Dad!" Alyssa shouted from the veranda, where she had been sitting all this time. "Let it be. He doesn't want to marry her anymore. She cheated on him." This took me by surprise because I had no idea that Alyssa knew. My father opened and closed his mouth like a fish out of water. He looked at Alyssa, then back at me, and finally at Wayne. My father is not a fool. He immediately realized that she was telling the truth. I was going to grab the object and strangle her, but she became even more impudent. She walked over to the table, placed the laptop on it, opened the window, and the video started playing. I screamed in horror when I realized that this video was from Jamaica. After all, those idiots had put it on the internet. My mother looked like she was about to have a stroke. My father became even angrier. His look at me almost killed me outright. "Josie, why did you do this? Why is this old man beating you with a whip?" While the video was playing, my father vomited on the grass near the table. For a long time, no one said anything. Then he just looked at me and asked, "Why, Josie?" I couldn't think of anything to say. "She's a freak," Alyssa cackled, laughing hysterically. "Josie, did you do this because you and Wayne were having problems in the bedroom?" he asked quietly. Alyssa threw a stack of papers in front of my father. I was even more determined to strangle this little expletive. "She slept with that old man for almost 2 years. "Dad, look at the emails," Alyssa chirped. "This just proves my point," my father said. "We all go through this. There are many ways to treat these things, and sometimes we just have to let those we love find other sources if we can't handle it ourselves." "What do you mean?" asked Wayne, who was shocked by Alyssa's actions. "You know Dad hinted you couldn't." "Dad, you're crazy. Alyssa said he can lift it. He has no problem with that." "Alyssa, shut up, you're still a child," my father said. "You don't know a damn thing about intim. The women on your mom's side are all nonsense." "She's not fat, she's pregnant," said my mother. "Oh God, no." "Oh God, yes," Alyssa said, rubbing her tummy. My father's eyes were as big as saucers. "I told you he could handle it," Alyssa grinned. I was too shocked to react. My father lunged at Wayne. He hit Wayne in the head, then grabbed him by the throat and began to choke him. I froze in place. Alyssa did not. She grabbed the first thing she could reach, which was a 3-foot, 2x4 leaning against the porch. She hit my father's head with it as hard as she could. The wood made a popping sound when it struck his head, and he fell like a stone. My mom ran up to him, and Alyssa started rubbing and kissing Wayne's neck. I just stood there and smiled because my brain kicked in, and I knew this was the perfect option to save my marriage. With the help of my mother, Rose, my father unsteadily got to his feet, sat down at the table, and opened another beer. Alyssa pulled Wayne to his feet and punched him in the chest. "Damn, don't ever do that again," she screamed at him. "You didn't even try to resist. If anyone other than me hits you, I expect you to fight back." My father had finally recovered enough to speak. "Wayne, sorry for my reaction. You're a good guy. We'll figure it out," he said. "We just have something to talk about." Was it some kind of revenge? I sat there and smiled because, as bad as what I did seemed, Wayne not only slept with but impregnated my 19-year-old sister. It was even worse. "I forgive you, honey," I said with faint sadness, reaching for his hand. I was all Tammy Wynette, stick to your man routine. "Oh," Alyssa said. "I think I'm going to throw up." "Are these contractions?" asked my father. "Morning sickness," Mom said. "It's Josie's shitty game," Alyssa said. "Look, I hate to burst someone else's bubble, but it wasn't an accident," she said, "and it wasn't Wayne's fault. I've been crazy about Wayne since I first saw him. I always thought he was too good for Josie. Josie always treated me like crap, and she was always, sometime last year, right after my 18th birthday party, I was going to see Josie and Wayne after school. Josie, as usual, forgot to give me a birthday present and, as usual, lied about it. She told me to come to her house on Monday and said she would give me a gift. I thought she would just write me a check or give me some money, like she always does. But when I got there, I saw Josie walking into her house with a guy who was about the same age as your dad. While she was fiddling with the door keys, the guy put his arms around her. He kept one hand down her pants and the other under her sweater, and she smiled like some prostitute while he caressed her. It was the best gift my sister ever gave me. It told me that I could have what I wanted most in life. Then I started making plans. It took me over a year to get everything in order, and even then, it almost didn't happen. I found out that this old fool was her boss and that he was also married. But every time Josie left town, 6 times this year alone, Wayne would either lock himself in their house alone or go to a car somewhere. So this time, I made sure to start pestering Josie about how I needed a man's perspective on the problem I was facing. She had no idea that the guy I was having problems with was Wayne. Josie always put Wayne in front of me. She knew that I had always had a liking for him and even told him about it. She wanted to go away and have that old man kick her 5th place so badly that she handed poor Wayne to me on a silver platter. The next problem I encountered was Wayne's dad. Do you remember how I called you and told you that he wouldn't let me have a glass of wine? I said, "My father, I told you to relax a little. I'm glad I didn't just leave it all to chance. I don't have a collection of nasty underwear like Josie's." He didn't touch me anyway. He didn't even look at me. Every time I got close enough to touch him, he moved away from me. Listening to my sister's story about seduction, I realized that things were not going well for me. I began to puzzle over the decision when my mother, who was smiling like Alyssa, was asked the question. "So, what did you do, Alyssa?" "Mom, I was desperate. I knew this was my only chance." Alyssa said, "I showed him all these messages and emails between Josie and her boss, but all this did was upset him. Even then, he began looking for reasons to forgive her. He thought perhaps she was being blackmailed." "What did you do then, Mom?" Alyssa asked my dad. "I pilled him," Alyssa said. "I used a combination of date rape pills and Viagra. It worked like a charm. We did this all night, and for the record, I'm not some easy girl, this was my first time. I probably got pregnant then, but my window for conception was still open for the next 3 days. The next morning was crucial. Any woman can get a guy under the influence of substances, but I needed him to show me 2 things, that he could want me without being pumped up by something, and that he could make love to me and also just have me. Honestly, I have no idea why Josie would even want another man. That's because it's all a game to you." I shouted at her. "My marriage is not something you can play with. Alyssa, from what you just told me, it occurs to me that you can still get an abortion, get yourself together, and go to college next month. From what you just told me, you can totally turn things around," I said. Alyssa hissed at me, "Nobody touches my baby." "So what are you planning, honey?" asked my mother. "You know that your father and I will help you in any way we can." "But what about Wayne and your sister?" "Mom, I don't have to plan anything anymore," Alyssa said. "Josie's marriage is over. She threw it down the toilet herself. It's impossible to save it, and no matter how much I would like to hear that you and Dad want to help me, I don't need it. You said it yourself, Daddy, Wayne is a good guy. He will never leave his child. If I walked out of this house right now, I wouldn't get to the end of the block before he stopped. The Mustang will take me home." My father looked at my mother, and they both shrugged. "If you really want to help me," Alyssa continued, "convince Josie to just sign the papers and turn herself in. It doesn't matter to me. I can let Wayne's case be denied and just wait 5 years for it to pass muster. There is no law in the world that says he must live with her just because they are married. But I assume that you, the grandparents, want all your grandchildren to be born into married families. Are you having twins?" my mom asked, looking surprised. I was still in shock. "No, Mom, but I don't think this will be our last child." "I see at least 3 or 4, I said. Mom and Dad looked at me. "You're all crazy," I said. "I will not give this little one up." My husband Wayne and I will figure this out." Alyssa put her clothes back on and stood up. "Wayne, tell my father that you love me and promise to always take care of me and our children, unless I do something stupid like Josie," she said, as I watched with tears in my eyes. Wayne told my father exactly what Alyssa had said. My sister hugged my parents and then wrapped her arm around my husband's waist. They got into his car and drove away. 3 weeks later, under pressure, I agreed to the terms of the divorce, but Wayne changed the reason for filing to irreconcilable differences. Unfortunately, I didn't receive a cent. The judge said Wayne should pay me $200 a week for 2 years and also approved the debt I owed Wayne. He ordered me and, in a separate case, John, to each pay Wayne the $21,000 he had paid to the kidnappers. This meant I had to pay Wayne $200 a week for 2 years. Strangely, the day after my divorce became official, John and I were fired. It was almost as if someone higher up the corporate ladder was waiting for this. Wayne, with the Mustang engine roaring and growling, drove us home for the first time. True, we had both been to my house before, but this was the first time we were going there as our home. Alyssa grabbed my hand through the center console and pulled it towards her until it was resting on her stomach. "So, the cheetah caught his prey," I began. "I told you I'm a tigress," she grinned, "and now we will have a cub." "You still caught me," I said. "No, honey, I saved you," she smiled. "Wayne, do you love me? Are you happy with how things turned out?" she asked. "Very," I said. When we arrived at the house, she began to open the connecting door. I carefully pulled her hand out. "We need to go in through the front door this time," I said. "Why?" she asked. "First of all, the neighbors need to see you." "I want them to know this is your home too," I said. "Secondly, there's a tradition. It's something like carrying a bride over the threshold." I picked her up, and later we got ready for bed. "Do you know what we're going to do?" she asked. I stretched out on the bed, and she climbed in next to me. "Are you sure this is a good idea because of the baby?" she asked. "You know, I think it's a good idea and it won't hurt the baby in any way. She'll love it, and her mom really needs it." "Do I need to buy some provocative underwear?" she grinned. "Wayne, I just want to use your love tonight." "I don't want to lose your love tonight," she told me. "You'll never lose it," I said, as she started kissing me. Alyssa told me a few days after she moved in with me that Don, Alak, and MK Mouse were her friends whom she had asked to stage a fake kidnapping. They never intended to take the money, their goal was to convince me that Josie was cheating. Alyssa was lucky with her backup plan, and their help was not needed, but it helped to finally prove to me that Josie was cheating. From that day on, there were no more secrets between us. We lived happily ever after. I disowned my sister, Josie. Neither she nor Wayne seemed to care. I thought this would make life so much harder for my parents during the holidays, but the grandkids always win. After she gave birth, Alyssa's body returned to its pre-pregnancy shape, and even I had to admit that my niece was adorable. I have to give Alyssa some credit, she saw what she wanted and took it. The worst part about it all was that she took everything from me, my husband, my house, my life. I don't understand how things have changed so much. When we were growing up, I was always on top. Apparently, Alyssa has simply learned to choose her battles. Then she lay in wait for me like a predator. What do you think of our story today? It seems to me that it was not necessary to get rid of the husband through manipulation and the law. It could have been done normally, but in this story the victim is definitely the husband. What's your opinion? Write in the comments. Until new videos.